Are you ready for another rant?
But if that was off, I'd be whipping your ass up and down this street. Yeah,
Hello, welcome back to Ralland's Rant. Today I'm not joined by anyone. I'm joined by myself. I'm also joined by the remainder of a cold that has absolutely plagued my life for the last 7 to 10 days. So excuse me if I'm clearing my throat a lot, because that's kind of what happens when you're on the other side of a cold. And it's also what happens when your immune system goes to basically war on a daily basis for a week, and you're sleep deprived, you're stressed, you work every day, and you have to run for 5 to 6.5 hours every day as well. So there's the first of many for the whole duration of this podcast, which hopefully won't be long. I'll keep it well below the hour because I know attention spans are not exactly the best at the moment. I'm sorry for the dig. But I'd like to start this podcast off by saying thank you for everyone who donated. The donation link is actually still live because I'd gotten all the donations, and in Fitzwilliam Lawn Tennis Club, I was finally given, kindly given, that sounds terrible. I was kindly given envelopes with cash in them because some of the elder statesmen of the club, that's kind of how they do things, where it's still like, rather than send a 12-year-old 50 quid on Revolut, they'll give you 50 quid in cash, or maybe 70 quid without the discounts or the rates you'd get charged on the old cards. But anyway, oh my God, sorry, my throat is still in bits. I would just sincerely like to thank everyone who donated, everyone who messaged, everyone who came out to join me on runs, people who were standing on the road during the marathons, or even like during the Dublin Marathon, there was several people who were there cheering us on, which was incredible. And also, even, truth be told, thank you for the people who didn't think I'd do it, because that gave me a little bit of motivation. Not that I needed more, but it was good to have in the back pocket, where I would say 98% of people I spoke to were like, you're not going to be able to do this and you're way out of your depth. I'll actually attach a Damon Dunphy quote after this to kind of put into words what people were thinking of me when I announced I'd be doing 7 marathons in 7 days.
I think I said, and I say it again, I think he's been shown to be out of his depth.
But yeah, I suppose I'll begin where the idea originated from. And for people who don't know me, during COVID, I did a 100k walk in 24 hours, and then I did 3 marathons in 24 hours. The 3 marathons, they weren't all running. One was a run, one was a row, and another was a cycle. So I did 2 relatively insane challenges before. And when I'd finished, so I did the 100k first, then I did the 3 marathons, I think like a year later. Once I was finished that, I was like, I am never doing any of that shit again. It just hurts. It's dangerous. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so like these these completely absurdly insane challenges are just dangerous. Like, it's not like they're kind of dangerous to begin with, but then when you take into the fact that like I've an illness that can get very serious very quickly if I don't manage it properly, especially when I'm exercising, it raises the stakes so much. But I suppose where it originated from was I was insanely busy. Like from August, September, I was essentially working 3 to 4 jobs, including a 9 to 5, including 2 coaching coaching jobs, one with a school, one with a club. And I was doing my podcast as well. So I was flat out with all of those 4 things. And I remember thinking in like October, I had a very busy summer, got away loads, had loads of weddings. And I remember thinking in October, I was like, I have like nothing to really look forward to. Like, I don't have any trips. I don't have any big kind of landmark events. And I was like, I might just try and do something insane. So I started sending out feelers on social media being like, do you think I would be able to run a marathon in under 4.5 hours, and to see what people would say to that. Then I would start being like posting stuff like, oh, could I walk to Cork with just a tent and some food and clothes? Could I walk 200k in 48 hours? So I was throwing out feelers, and I was slowly getting my head around the fact that I might do something insane in the next couple of weeks. And I then put up a poll on Instagram where I was like, what do you think is the toughest? It was walk to Cork, 200k walk in 2 days. I think, I'm trying to think what the other one was. I think then there was like 7 marathons in 7 days, and then there was something else. But like the 7 marathons in 7 days, a lot of people said was the toughest, or was voted the toughest. So once that was done, I kind of spoke to a few of my close friends, and I was like, here, I think I might do it. And not one of them, not that they should have, but not one of them was like, I think that's a good idea. They were all like, that's absurd. You won't be able to do it. X, Y, Z. And once I heard that, that was nearly enough confirmation for me to do it. And not because like people weren't backing me to do it. It was more of a case that when people think you can't do something, they get twice as interested. And what I mean by that is like, if you're doing something, oh, I'm going to do a half marathon, please donate money. Of course, people would donate money, but nowhere near the amount that I ended up getting in total would be manufactured from a 20k run. It's manufactured from me saying I'm going to do 7 marathons in 7 days, and 99.5% of people going, you're completely out of your depth. Your head is clearly gone. And thirdly, you're probably going to do 2 and quit and look like the biggest idiot ever. Yes, sign me up. Where do I donate? So yeah, that's where I thought it'd be a good idea. I also then, I realized that like by doing the other 2 crazy challenges before, I had to kind of top it, and this gave me the opportunity to do it. And yeah, so started doing research. There's a few YouTube videos, but like there's not a huge amount of, I suppose, books written. There's not a huge amount of literature on how to run 7 marathons in 7 days. And yeah, it's especially like as well, I remember putting into ChatGPT what is the likelihood in percentage of you completing 7 marathons in 7 days, and it was like 0.1% chance. It was like for the average human being, you have a 0.1% chance of completing 7 marathons in 7 days. And then I kind of put in a question after being like, is that at any pace? And I was like, yes, it would still be 0.1% regardless if it's run or walked. And then I was like, what if you are type 1 diabetic? And then it goes, your chances would be 0.001. So essentially 1 in a million. So I was like, right. ChatGPT says I have no chance. My friends, family, and even strangers have said I have 0 chance of doing it. And that was enough to get my juices going, because I was like, ultimately, I'm not doing it to prove people wrong. I'm not doing it to have the last laugh on ChatGPT. I'm doing it to raise a shit ton of money for, I suppose, a foundation that means a lot to me. And without making this some sort of sob story, plenty of my friends have unfortunately been affected by cancer, but in the last like year or two, the one thing I used to always say about cancer is that like no one in my family or even like extended family had ever suffered from cancer. And that did change over the last like 2 years since I last did my challenges. So it kind of, I suppose, like it took on a whole new meaning. And when I put, pen to paper and set up the GoFundMe page, I had a bit more motivation and reason behind it as well. It was a bit more close to the bone. And yeah, I then had to go to my GP. I went to 1 or 2 physios who kind of gave me a bit of feedback on how to best prep and whatnot. And the big thing with the doctor was, he was like, "You're an idiot. This is extremely dangerous. You could have like injuries that you may not recover from for the rest of your life, etc., etc." And I remember my GP was basically saying, he was like, stress fractures are a huge worry. He was saying like internal bleeding is a huge worry. He's saying the fact you're diabetic is a huge worry. If you have a hypo, which is when your blood sugar goes low, he's like, if you have that in a state of exhaustion, you literally could collapse. And in some cases, you can literally go into a coma and start literally turning into, I'm trying to think. I was going to say the like puppet in Team America, but he actually like survives, and he just projectile vomits in an alleyway somewhere. But it's like, it's really serious. If you get low blood sugar, you literally can die within 20 minutes. So yeah, the GP had a point. And yeah, but he did say, he was like, listen, I'm not going to stop you. I can't stop you. So this is what you should do. This is how you can manage your bloods. This is how you can manage injury, blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah, so what I did was I had Ryan Sands and some other guy. I'm going to have to guess his name up here, so forgive me. And here comes another clout trayer. There we are. And where's this guy? I should really know this, shouldn't I? I'll get his name. So there's Ryan Sand. So I reached out to him and got a bit of advice off him in relation to like preparation, gear, all sorts of jazz. And he gave me some good feedback around like shoes and other shit like that. He was big on the shoes, which was really good advice. He was like, buy a terrible pair. So I went on Temu or Temu, whatever you want to pronounce it as, and literally got one from a sweatshop over there for €4. Then I had a pair from Decathlon, which was like €38-40. Zach Bitter was his name. He has the world record, or had the world record for the 100-mile run, and I think the 12-hour run as well. He's another freak. But anyway, I got advice off these guys. And yeah, Ryan basically was saying, buy a cheap pair, which I got, buy a mid pair, which I got, and then he was like, buy an expensive one, which I got, like these Adidas shoes that were marked down from like 260 quid to like 128. So I got them. And then from a prep point of view, I'd only 5 weeks. So with that, it was like, you basically for a week or two, a week out, so week 3 and 4 of the 5-week prep, that's when I'd go hell for leather. But yeah, it wasn't really like drastic changes. Obviously the running aspect was big, but like I still maintain going to the gym as much as possible. I, as like with the marathons, had to do a 9-to-5 job, had to coach several times a week, etc., etc. And yeah, so like the first week, like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then Sunday, I ran along with doing gym. Week 2 was slightly different because we had this like Ryder Cup piss up event in Navan. And sorry for people who are from Navan, but Navan is, I'm actually, yeah, it's a shithole. But great golf courses. Some of the food there was good. Beers, way too IPA heavy. There's a casino in someone's like living room there up some back alley. I won't get into the details, but like regulations and I suppose investigation need to be had about the legality of basically that entire town as a whole. But yeah, the Ryder Cup event was definitely not good prep. So on Saturday of the second week, I was playing basically 2 rounds of golf, going on the piss, driving back to Dublin, where I had to coach that day. Then once I was finished coaching, I had to go for a 5K run, which felt like hell. And then suddenly I'm rolling into week 3, where I know the next 2 weeks are basically the bulk of my training. So like week 3 on the Monday, I did an 8K run. Then Tuesday was a day off. Wednesday, I did an 80-minute run. Thursday was just a day off. When I say day off, I went to the gym for 30, 40 minutes. Then that Friday, I did a 19K run. Saturday, day off. Sunday, then did a 13K run. And then week 4, which was basically just run every day and try clock up close to like 45, 50k over the weekend. And I did 6k on the Monday, a 40-minute run on Tuesday, a 6k run on Wednesday, 5k run on Thursday, gym plus 5k run on Friday, a 32-kilometer run on Saturday, and then I was meant to do like a 15k run on Sunday, but I was in such pain and discomfort that I only did a 7k run. And that was basically my prep done. Then on week 5, which was the last full week before the event, I did a gym session on Monday, Tuesday, did a 30-minute run Wednesday, Thursday, full day of rest. Friday was gym and a 4K, Saturday 5K, Sunday gym session and paddle, and then Monday was chill out, and Tuesday I was starting. So, yeah, again, I like prepped reasonably well in relation to like, again, 5 weeks. If I could do it again, I would have given myself 5 months, and I think it would have gone a lot smoother. But yeah, with the shoes, I tested out all 3 shoes in the lead up. The Temu, fucking shithole shoes. They just weren't going to work because it essentially was like someone had just wrapped loads of toilet paper around my feet, and I was trying to run with them with a few laces sticking out. So that wasn't viable from a support point of view. The really expensive pair, they actually felt okay, but they were a little bit tight. And I know you're meant to like have tight shoes to stop yourself from ultimately like sliding to create blisters. But the big part of me was, what a lot of people don't understand is when you get fatigued, the weight distribution on your feet will change. So like when you start, you'll probably be very level on how you pound the pavement. And then maybe when you get a bit fatigued, what tends to happen is you might overextend. So your right side of your foot's a bit more dominant, and then the left side of your left foot's a bit more dominant. And then when you get completely knackered and your calves and hamstrings weaken, you might start pointing your toes out and you kind of start dragging your feet a bit. So when that happens, it's like, right, you're overhanging your feet, so you need probably a bit more wiggle room in your shoes, etc., etc. So these were things I took into account, and that's why Decathlon shoes were picked to start the test match. And yeah, it was a great decision. Like, listen, I had a shit ton of blisters by the end of it, and I've had to rip out 2 toenails in the interim. But other than that, my feet are good, and yeah, I didn't break anything. But I suppose then from a mental prep point of view, obviously working wasn't ideal, and like working 9 to 5, what I had planned on doing was taking a half day on Wednesday and Friday as voluntary days. But as things progressed leading up to it, I work in sales and I had to hit my target. So plans ultimately changed, and I had to work the full day Wednesday and Friday in order to hit my target, which I eventually did miraculously. But yeah, that was something that was like a stress that I knew I'd have, but like it was definitely way worse than I anticipated. Like actually having to work while then knowing once you finished work, you basically had 5 minutes to go to the toilet, and then you're just straight into a marathon in the pitch dark, basically. But yeah, one of the things I did mentally prep for was like preparing for the worst scenarios. So I had a piece of paper with just a quote I came up with where it just said, don't savor success and equally find positives in negatives. And that was just like a constant reminder. So an example I'd give you is like, okay, during my first marathon, all went relatively well, but the last like 2 to 3K was like 10 out of 10 pain in my calf, and I felt like someone had just shot my calf muscle. It was that sore. But I remember in that specific moment where I like 5K before this, so like 30, 40 minutes beforehand, I'd felt great. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm like 34, 35K, and this is a bit of a piece of piss. I'm not in any huge pain. And I remember thinking at that stage, I was like, don't think you have this sussed. Don't get overconfident. Don't think you've made it, because you haven't. And then equally, when I was struggling towards the end of that, I felt like crap, but I flipped it into a positive, being like, you basically have 2 kilometers left and then you're done this marathon again. And I took each marathon without sounding like an IRFU soundboard for a rugby player getting interviewed after a match. There was part of me that was like, take it marathon by marathon, because if you took it as like a joint effort of 7 marathons, you'd literally lose your mind and you wouldn't even start, because it is so much time and effort and energy and time on feet that you literally go insane. So when I felt like shit, I always thought it could be worse. And when I felt great, I was like, listen, shit's probably coming around the corner, so just prepare for that. So that was something that I was glad I did, because it was definitely very helpful. And I suppose talking about the marathons themselves, like the first one was on a Tuesday. I worked the full day. Like 5 minutes after work, I didn't even stretch, didn't eat anything. I just went. I was like, you know what, screw it, let's just go. And yeah, I went out. I think it was like a 7:50, 7:51 pace, and finished in 5.5 hours. Wasn't that bad, bar like the last 2 kilometers, which was great. The biggest learning I got from it, I had like a little vest bag on. A big thing was like I didn't drink enough salts. And then another thing with my diabetes was basically, without boring you and making a big sob story, I'm like, oh, poor me, I don't have a pancreas. The big thing I'd point out is that my blood sugar basically wouldn't react to a lot of the Haribos and shit I was eating. Like normally, if I just had, like, say, Haribos, my blood sugar would spike outrageously high. But since I was in such a state of exhaustion and fatigue, I would eat so much sugar and so much food and Lucasades, and it would have like barely any effect on my blood sugar. So what that meant was I actually ran out of food quite often. And one thing I didn't do for the first marathon was actually bring my debit card out. And the reason that was significant is, like, every other day, and including during the Dublin Marathon, I would like go into garages and be like, I need 2 Haribo bags and I need Lucasade, give it to me now. But that was a good learning from that. And yeah, like I vlogged most of my experiences during the marathons, but the one thing I would say is, like, I did take it day by day. Work, the one thing I didn't really prepare for was on, say, the third marathon. So like the first marathon, 7:51 pace, so that was 5.5 hours. Then I was like, I think I was like 30 seconds slower in round 2. So that was like a 5:56 marathon. Then round 3, which was a 5:57 time, like 5 hours, 57 minutes. That was the day after. So again, Wednesday and Friday of the week, I thought I'd have a half day, but due to work, I basically couldn't take them off. I was under that much pressure to hit. So that was a part where I didn't anticipate how that would affect me mentally. And then throughout the week, I always built up Friday as the big day, because it's the start of the weekend. On Saturday, I had a 30th birthday to go to. So I was like, get through that. And then Sunday's the Dublin Marathon. And then if you get through that with all the energy, you've only got one left. So I was like, Friday was always going to be the tough one. But that's why I was like, oh, I have a half day Friday. But turns out Wednesday, Friday, I had to work full days, which meant not only did I get less time to recover, and I had to go like straight to bed once I finished the marathons on Wednesday, Friday, it also meant that I had to run the dark on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which, no pun intended, was very dark. Like, it was shit. Running in the dark is like, it's just bleak. It is. And like the weather, thankfully, was very, very good. But I suppose the big thing that you don't really take into consideration is your footing and making sure that you don't trip on stuff, you don't slip, you don't, say, for instance, step in a puddle, because then that moisturizes your, well, not moisturizes. Imagine that was like the latest ad. Nivea for men, and it's just some lad dipping his face in a big puddle by the canal. But my point is, if you get wet feet, it can make infections twice as worse. It can make like damp socks, all that jazz. It's just a bad idea, and I'm speaking from experience. So yeah, that was something that I didn't prep for, which I found very tough to do. It's just the run in the darkness, but thankfully loads of people joined me. One of the routes I enjoyed taking was starting from like Leeson Street and then just like running up the canal by like Portobello. Well, it'd be like Ranelagh, Rathmines, Portobello, Dolphins Barn, up towards like Phoenix Park and back, and that would be like pretty significant. That would be a 7 to 10 kilometer run, maybe even longer. So if I was ever in a bit of a hole, I'd always use that as like a I don't know, like a little track. And yeah, like from, I suppose, like the marathons themselves, some things I'd give advice on. Footwear is really important, but then also your socks are really important. Then you need to Vaseline the shit out of your feet. The socks you wear, you need to have Vaseline all over them. And that's basically what I did every day. Like, I had so much Vaseline that, like, I'd say P. Diddy was getting a bit jealous. I know exactly what I mean. But does he know what I mean? Maybe not. I don't know. But the Vaseline was really important. Clipping your toenails is really important because, as I found out in the 100k walk, I forgot to do that. And by the end of the walk, my big toe, the side of it basically had just been ripped open by my second biggest toe nail that was just basically scraping against it for 23 and a half hours, and it led to a really, really bad cut. But yeah, the Vaseline was crucial. Then like the food beforehand, like I'd have a huge lunch. I would also then like have a shit ton of multivitamins, electrolytes. I'd take creatine, or as a former teacher of mine would say, creatinine. And yeah, just like also not like gulping loads of water in, but like when I'd wake up at 8:30, 9, I would have my coffee. I wouldn't have a coffee after 12 because that tends to dehydrate you a little bit. So I'd just be sipping on 500 mils of water every like 30 to 40 minutes. And then after the marathons, I would have an ice bath ready, and not one of these pretentious ones that are like on Sandyford Cove where you hop into an ice bath, take an Instagram story, and then go into a sauna and then pay 48 quid for the experience. I just bought ice cubes, which are like 68 cents a pop, and bought like 4 or 5 bags of that and just chucked it into a bath. So that's like €3. And then, yeah, that was a good enough ice bath for me. And then, yeah, I would eat after the ice bath. So I'd come in, I'd start the marathons Tuesday to Friday at like 5, 5:30. I'd finish them at 11 o'clock to like 12 o'clock at night, and would do the same routine where I'd just go straight into an ice bath for 5 to 10 minutes. I would shower, and then I'd eat, which would take 20 to 30 minutes. And then, yeah, straight to bed, and then up at 20 past 8, 8:30 the next morning, and just repeated that Tuesday to Friday. And it wasn't that bad. Like, as crazy as it sounds, the first 2 or 3 days were relatively okay. And like a few of the questions that were sent on, I'll answer them now. So one was like, did I ever take a flash poo, or did I ever have to like take a shit 2 hours in or 4 hours in? And in any of none of the marathons did I ever feel the need to do a number 2, bar the only time I did that was in the Dublin Marathon on the Sunday, and I'll explain what happened there shortly in a few minutes. But no, like, crazy enough, what did I do? Like, well over 30 hours of running. There wasn't a stage where I was like, crap, I need to, no pun intended, like literally take a crap. But yeah, many people said they come out of nowhere and you just take these flash poos, but that never was the case with me. Also probably down to the fact that I didn't eat a lot. Like, I was 92.9, 92.8 kilos when I started. And then when I finished and weighed myself the day after, I was like 88.2 88.2 or 88.3. So essentially it lost like 4.5 kilos. So if you're looking for a summer shred, 7 marathons in 7 days will get you there. And another question was like, when did I get over the hump? I suppose that is asking me like, when did I get over the monotonous nature of the event? The thing is, I never thought of it as like 7 marathons. So like every marathon, I just treated it as its own. I'd wake up either feeling horrific, pretty shit, or else somewhat like doably okay, if that makes any sense. But yeah, like, and the one thing as well that I need to stress is it doesn't matter about your sleep, your prep, your mental prep, your nutrition. I did 7 marathons in 7 days, and some nights I got an hour sleep, maybe half an hour sleep. Others I slept for 9-10 hours. And again, some nights before I had really good food, etc., etc. And it's literally just a flip of the coin. It's like your man in No Country for All Men just going, call it. And if it's heads, you wake up and you feel great and you start the marathon feeling good. Tails, you feel like genuine close to death and you can't move. You're in excruciating pain. Everything aches. You're mentally weak, etc., etc. And it's mad because like sometimes I'd get an hour sleep and wake up. Like for instance, when I did I think it was the 5th one. So it would have been Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the Saturday one. So that would have been my 5th and 5 and 5 days. That was quicker than my 2nd and 3rd one, which was insane. But I remember on the Friday night, I got a horrific night's sleep. Like I'd say max an hour and a half because I was in such pain and waking up with cramps and pain and there was blood on my sheets, etc., etc. If I say etc., etc. again after this, I'm going to do 50 marathons in 50 days. So I won't say it from now on. But yeah, I do recall that I had the worst night's sleep, and yet I still got up and had my second quickest marathon on the 5th day, which is insane. So to answer the question about like, did I get over the hump? I never really felt the hump. It was just like my body got worse and worse and worse. But mentally, as I went on, I got closer to the finish line, so that got me a little bit stronger. So it's a weird experience where your body is completely failing you, but mentally, the closer you get, the kind of stronger you get. If that makes any sense, it's bizarre, but that's kind of how I felt anyway. And then another one was like, what did I listen to? So this was at the time of the election in the United States. So Harris and Trump was all the noise. So I had like Trump, I had JD Vance, I had a Harris podcast, and then I had like 2 or 3 other ones. And then I also had one of my own. So my podcast with Brian O'Mara, which was my first ever one, I'd never re-listened to it ever. And that was like 7-8 years ago. So part of me was like, I'd actually really love to re-listen to that. So that was one I listened to as well. But I would have those podcasts for when I knew I'd have 10, 12, 15K on my own, because there was people running with me, I'd say 50, 60% of the time. But if I knew I had like 10 kilometers or even like 6 kilometers, 8 kilometers on my own, I'd just stick in a podcast unless my body was absolutely screwed. And then again, from a music point of view, I had a death metal playlist, which like was the heaviest, most satanic songs I could get and enjoy. And I'd do that like if I was in the pits, like mentally, physically, emotionally in a terrible place, I'd get that playlist blaring for half an hour and it would kind of drive me on. Then I had like a playlist of like actually all my favorite songs, which was like 2 hours long. And then I had, which was an idea I read about, it was about doing a marathon in your hometown. They suggested it would be a good idea to have music that brings back nostalgia, which I actually thought was quite interesting of an idea, but it also means you need to be like Batman, where you can just appear in 7 places at once. But I put up like 15, 20 songs of like the last 20 years that like brings me back to a certain time and place. And in some cases, like a very specific time and place, like a place where something tragic happened, or a place where something hilarious happened, or I don't know, like name your story, name your reason, and there's probably a song attached to it because you were listening to your iPod that night, or you remember from a film, etc. Oh, I was about to say it. I didn't say the yeah. I nearly said it. But imagine that 50 and 50 days. No. But yeah, and then that was actually quite an interesting take where like I put in all these songs that brought me back to when I was like, I don't know, a 22-year-old doing X and Y, or a 14-year-old doing X and Y. So it was actually quite enjoyable listening to that. But yeah, it was mainly 3 or 4 playlists, a few podcasts, and again, the podcasts I'd use when I was, essentially going to run for 5-10K on my own. And what was the most insane thing you saw during your marathons? I have 2. So number 1 was the attack of the cat. Was when I was walking up an alleyway to get towards the canal and cross the road, and just as I was going up these steps, this feline approached me. And when I say approach, I kind of approached the feline as I was a bit delirious, and I saw the creature, and I was like, right, I might as well try pet it. Or maybe what I was thinking of doing, I actually was thinking of doing this, like not really doing it, but like it would have been quite funny, was tying my phone to the cat and getting it to like just basically walk around for the day, and I'll just use it on Strava. But I don't think that would have lasted long. But anyway, I go up to the cat, make the usual cat noise, the like, the cat approaches me. I'm like, right, I'll give it a pet and be on my way. I pet it, glances its head off my knees a few times, and I'm like, oh, this is a nice cat. And then I kind of squat down, which hurt a lot at this stage because this was one of, I think could have been the 3rd or 4th day I was doing the marathon. And out of nowhere, like I mean out of nowhere, the cat just glances up at me and we make eye contact. I'm kind of like, is like a bit like Tarantino, what's going on here? And the cat just out of nowhere just goes and just whips a right claw right across my shin, rips the skin. And like cats are like outrageously quick. They're like fucking snakes. And I jumped up and I was like, Jesus Christ. And then I screamed at the cat and the cat scurried away. But it made me think that like not only was my body failing me, but nature was failing me. And not only was it failing me, it was actually trying to literally kill me. And then the second thing that I found bizarre was actually during the Dublin Marathon. So the new tax on the water bottles. So I actually couldn't believe this. It was like 5K in, 10K in, you run through all the water stations. I'd be very diligent with like putting my water things back into the bins or else stacking them so that people wouldn't like trip over a water bottle, because what a terrible way to end your marathon dream. But as I got like 25, 30K in and it was a bit more dispersed and there was a few more gaps in the running crowd, it wasn't as condensed as it would have been in the first 5 or 10K. I noticed just like complete random people of all nationalities. Like it turned into like a furlong hurdle. Like you'd be jogging and struggling and being like, this is the worst thing ever. And then suddenly you'd have to jump over some lad in a Nike tracksuit because he's in the middle of the road picking up about 60 bottles. And I put 2 and 2 together and my eyes didn't lie to me. And I realized that what a lot of people were doing was they were going around collecting all these bottles in bags and all sorts to obviously bring to their local Tesco or Lidl or wherever the hell they were going to get, 10 quid back. And I was like, that is insane. Don't get me wrong. I love the entrepreneurial aspects of it. I also love the there was 10-year-olds legging it and go, get out the fucking way. And it's like, I'm trying to do a marathon here, but okay, get your Ballygan bottle there, please. But yeah, they were probably the 2 things that really caught me off guard. But yeah, the week itself, as I said, you go through it, the pain just ramps up. as I said, I built up to Friday being like the be all end all. Friday was my slowest. It wasn't my slowest. Yeah, Friday was my slowest. It was like 6 hours, 21 minutes. Yeah, that was my slowest. But Friday was, it wasn't the toughest, but like I'd always built that up to be the hardest, which it was pretty horrific. I remember I did a lot of running around Black Rock, which for whatever reason I just hated. And I think it was probably because I'd grown so comfortable doing the canal because it's very flat. I also built up a good rhythm where like you'd run for 500-700 meters and then you'd get to like a traffic light place where you just walk across the road, use that as a quick rest, and then you'd go again. Well, like Black Rock, it's like the paths are terrible. Bar like down by the Dart station in the seafront, there's traffic lights everywhere. There's lads drinking as well, which was another thing. And then like there isn't actually just kind of long stretches of flat surface, I noticed. And then also if it was a bit windy by the sea, you'd be quite exposed to that, which was never good crack either. So yeah, it was not good. And that was to kind of, not to harp on about it, but it was tough running in pain and being in excruciating pain, knowing that like the one thing I thought I'd be assured of was actually the ability to sleep. But like sleeping after these marathons was close to impossible. You'd be full of adrenaline, you'd be in such excruciating pain, and that was one of the big things that I hated about finishing at like 11:30, 12 at night. It meant that you'd be trying to go to sleep 45 minutes after running for 5.5, 6.5 hours. And it's just absolutely close to impossible to do. And yeah, Friday was horrific. Saturday, as I said before, was like my second quickest. And the thing about Saturday was I'd mentioned that like I'd the worst night's sleep ever. But yeah, I got up. It was bright. It was the first time all week I'd actually ran when it was bright outside. So that was incredible. I had a 30th birthday to attend. I had a podcast to record at like 7, half 7 that night. And I started, I think I started at like 12, half 12. And I knew that I couldn't afford to do like a 6.5 hour marathon because then I'd miss the podcast and I'd come across as rude. But yeah, that like Saturday was a piece of cake. I ran out to the lighthouse by Ringsend, which was great. The only thing was I started running out to it and they have like all these uneven bricks. So like to get all the way out there, it's actually quite treacherous on not rolling your ankle. But then when I turn back, and it's like several K to turn back and go back towards like Sandymount when you're out there, is the wind started picking up and it pelted into me for about 4 or 5K, which wasn't that enjoyable. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact that I was in the brightness. I had people to see later on that day. I had a podcast to do and I had stuff to build for. Then the Dublin Marathon, which was the day after, so that was my 6th in 6 days, was the Dublin Marathon on the Sunday. I was in wave 1 and that was starting at 20 to 9. So I got up at like 10 to 8. I was viciously underprepared. I'd had like 6.5 hours kip. I got up, had a few slices of toast, 3 bananas, 2 yogurts, I think like a dairy milk. I was like, right, let's rock. And I go up to Leeson Street Bridge about 15 minutes before the time that I was meant to be starting at. And this was the around the corner fiasco where it was basically starting at the Sugar Club / the Institute. And I get to Leeson Street and there's a little barricade and there's a guy in a high vis and I go, how are you? I'm in wave 1. Can I walk up there and start? And he goes, no, you can't. I was like, no, I'm in the marathon. Look, here's my number. And he goes, no, you have to go around. And I go, where? And he goes, around the corner. And I'm like, which corner? And he goes, down to Bagot Street. I'm like, that's not around the corner. That's like a kilometre away. And he goes, yeah, well, go on. So I start walking with loads of people down to Bagot Street. Then we take a left over the canal, and I'm thinking, right, we can just take a left and head back towards Leeson Street. But you can't do that because there's barricades everywhere. So then I go to another girl who's wearing a high-vis jacket, and I'm like, hey, like, how do I actually get to the marathon? Do I have to do a marathon before the marathon, or what actually is going on here? As a great Quentin Tarantino once said. And then she goes, yeah, no, it's, you know where, and she was like, that hotel is. And I was like, first you're saying around the corner, and now you're saying, do I know where the hotel is? It's like, I know where every hotel is. Yeah. Like, can you narrow it down with the actual name, please? To which she was like, the one near Marion Square. And I'm like, oh. I was like, are you talking about the, like, it's literally called like the Leinster. The Leinster, I think, is what it's called. It used to be Howl at the Stairs. And that's where she was like, you need to go. And I'm like, that's another like 10 minutes. And what other people will fail to realize was this was my sixth. I hadn't even started, but this was my sixth in 6 days. So I'd strapping all over me. I was limping aggressively. And people were looking at me like, is this guy well? Because like we're all about to do our marathon, and people were like gearing up for it and taking it really seriously, as they should. And they see this guy wearing the Tropic Thunder Survive thing. You know, they're like, Survive. I was wearing that, like, it was like a triple XL t-shirt. And I'm limping with strapping all over my legs. And people are like, is this guy serious? Like, he's actually going to try to run a marathon? Like, what's wrong with him? And yeah, so I get there. I miss my time to depart by like 20 minutes because, as I said, it was around the corner FM that morning. So I get to wave 2 at the start line with like 60 seconds to spare. And they're like, okay, we're off in a minute. And before I know it, I'm literally off starting the marathon. And what I hadn't prepared for was you basically just start running, and there's thousands of people around you. There's thousands of people on the road. They're all screaming at you, and the energy's up. And I started running, and then before I know it, I'm like, Jesus, I've been running quite a while now. Oh my Jesus, I'm getting up to like Phoenix Park. Then like I'm on the north side, and then I bump into Al Deegan's. I don't even know where I saw him. He was like deep in the north side, and he ran with me for like a kilometer. And then I get into Phoenix Park, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, I must have been running for ages now. And then we run through Phoenix Park. There's loads of people there. I see even more people that I know, and they're giving words of encouragement and stuff like that, which was cool. And then we get to like Castleknock, and then that's when I'm thinking, wow, I must be like close to halfway, because we're going to be going on the south side soon. And what happened was I looked at my phone for, I think it was the first time. I may have looked at my phone after like a kilometer in, but this is the first time I properly let my guard down. And the whole thing was, mentally, I hadn't really prepped for the day, because I was like, it's the Dublin Marathon. The energy's going to be class. I've one more to go after this. It'd be a piece of piss. So I look at my phone, and I honestly was expecting myself to be genuinely about 14, 15k in, because I was like, we're nearly going to be going back over to the south side now, and there's no way, like, that's probably the halfway point. I look at my phone, and we're like 6.2 kilometers in, and my mind and my head and my body were just like, no, you're not going to be able to do 36 kilometers. And then I mentally slipped up, and I was like, then you have to do 42k tomorrow as well. So like, you've got like 75 kilometers to go, 74 kilometers to go. And then as I'm going through Castleknock with that, I was like, right, we'll just get to the south side. And I thought we were going down Castleknock because I hadn't checked the route. But then we took a sharp left and went back into Phoenix Park. So as I'm going through Phoenix Park, I feel pins and needles. I start shaking, and I'm like, right, am I just about to have a nervous breakdown here? What's the story? Turns out I had a low blood sugar incident, which was the first time all week this had happened. I tested my bloods. I was like dangerously low. So then I had to pick up a Lucozade bottle that was just on the floor and used, and started squirting that in. I then had to walk for like a minute just to kind of get my bearings back. And as I'm doing that, someone like runs by and is like, come on, keep going, which is great encouragement. And then I start jogging again, and it was literally at this moment, I think, again, 6.5, 7K in, I don't know why, but I literally started bawling my eyes out, because I remember it so vividly. I was like jogging, and I was like, the next time you see a water station or a medical tent or anyone, like even an ambulance, just go up to them and say, this is your 6th marathon in 6 days, you're done and you're quitting. And that's what happened. Like a kilometre later, we get out of Phoenix Park for the second time, and there's a water station, there's a medical tent. I literally run straight up to the medical tent, and I'm like, here, I'm a diabetic, I just had a low blood sugar, this is my 6th marathon in 6 days, I'm finished, I want to go home, can you help me, blah blah blah. So I sit down, they're like, okay, do we need to check your bloods? And I'm like, no, I just took loads of sugar, I should be okay. And before I started this, as I said previously, it was for Irish Cancer Society, and there's obviously a lot of people I know. There's also 1 or 2 people who reached out, one on Twitter, one through LinkedIn. They sent on their stories of cancer and their kind of their survival stories, if you will. And then I had some friends, co-workers, etc. reach out, and they wrote me some like pretty powerful, emotional, horrific messages that I purposely didn't read, but I saved them on my notes, or else I just saved them on WhatsApp in the star message. And it was I was like, if you're ever at a stage where you're actually going to quit, just read through maybe 2 or 3 of them, and they might do something for you. So I'm sitting in this medical tent just beside Phoenix Park, and this girl is thinking of ways and how they can clear the passage to get me out of here, because like they were going to put me in an ambulance and bring me to hospital, even though that wasn't necessary, and I kept telling them it wasn't necessary. But they were like, we need to, get you transportation, because you can't just like walk another 15k back to where you need to be. And it was like 5-6 minutes in the medical tent that I'm reading these messages, and like they were pretty. Just imagine how you'd feel on your 6th marathon in 6 days with limited sleep, your knee, your legs, your blistered feet, your toenails that are just leaking blood. You're genuinely just completely finished. You've just had a low blood sugar incident, which for those of you that hopefully will never get to experience it, it literally feels like you're drowning. And I'm reading through these messages, and again, the quote of don't savor success and equally find positives in the negatives. And reading through all this stuff, I was just like, right, you're still here, you feel like crap, this is the worst you physically will ever feel, why don't you just start walking again? And yeah, got up out of the medical tent and started strolling. Limping probably is a better adjective and terminology to use there, but yeah, kept going. And one in the medical tent was like, Richie, where are you going? And I'm like, I'm going on. Like the Undertaker back from the dead. But yeah, and then like it generally took me about 2 kilometers to be able to jog again. Like I was limping heavily for a good, I'd say 15 minutes, and then I could slowly start building up a jog. And I think what was quite funny was around like Crumlin and Dolphins Barn, I was walking up a hill and there was like boom boxes, there was fireworks going off, there was people screaming at you. And as I was walking by, this guy with a dog that genuinely looked like it was capable of eating me in 3.6 seconds, he goes, Richie, because you had on your vest your name. He goes, Richie. And I looked at him rather terrified. And he goes, you're walking. And I was like, I know, I'm wrecked. And he goes, you better not walk for much longer. And I kind of felt like, is that encouragement or is that a threat? As in, like, if I keep walking, he's going to unleash his hound on me. It was like fully a pit bull, like frothing at the mouth. But the one thing that was great about these areas like Crumlin and Dolphins Barn was not just the encouragement, but it was the biggest junket ever. They were like quite literally at stages throwing chocolate bars and Haribo at you, which was incredible. Genuinely, I was like, I should have just had my mouth open and just having cola bottles and dairy milk sliding into the back of my throat. It would have been even better. But yeah, that was cool. And then there was a few mix-ups along the way where people forgot that I was running under Luke Hickey's name because it wasn't my ticket. And I was actually, people were tracking a Richard Allen, who turns out this Richard Allen guy wasn't, he was some complete stranger with the same name as me, and he'd already finished the race. So people were texting me going, "Congrats, bud, incredible time." And I was like, looking at my phone, I was like, I've like 7K left. And yeah, basically I was realizing that there was some other doppelganger of me legging it around Dublin who people thought was me. I should have found out who it was and just took full credit that that was actually me. But yeah, I got there, and even my parents tried to meet me at some stage. They actually, like, yeah, they didn't see me because they had the wrong tracking person. So they were like, "Oh, we couldn't see you." And I was like, "Who are you looking at?" And it turns out this doppelganger of mine they were trying to find. But as I approached the end of the Dublin Marathon, I realized that like everyone all around me were like close to tears/deaths. People were like, you'd be running every 100 meters and then you'd just see someone on the floor like, oh, like literally close to dying. It was a war zone. And you realize there was a couple of K left. And one of the funniest, by far the funniest moment of the 7 marathons was, and I'll play the song here now, was during COVID. This is when like no one was working, no one could do anything, everyone was trapped in their house all day. I made a remix of the Quentin Tarantino video I love posting, and I recently got a new phone, so I did like the iCloud backup thing, so it stored all the songs back onto my phone. And one of the songs was this. It was like one of the files on my phone on my iTunes. So randomly it was on shuffle, and like, I don't know, some song came on, and then once it finished, this song came on.
What's going on here?
So I burst out, like I was erupting laughing with like 2 to 3 kilometers to go. And yeah, when I got over the finish line, I had a massive smile on my face, realized I'd one left, which I was never going to like fail on. And yeah, the next day was quite easy, like as in I didn't go that fast on purpose. I finished in a car park in Fitzwilliam Tennis Club at like 6:30 on my own. It was quite a fulfilling moment where like you just finished, no one was around, only self-gratification to sing you home. And yeah, it like once you finish it, you kind of think back to like all the doubts you had beforehand, and like the hypotheticals of like, what if I really injured myself and other stuff happens. And I always like thought back to like that Inception that Inception meme where it's like, I need a guarantee. And he's like, can I trust you? And he's like, you can't. Oh no. He's like, can you deliver? And he's like, you can't. Or he's like, but I can. I don't know. I'll just attach it here. But I kept thinking of that and laughing.
God, we should walk away from this.
Hold on. If I were to do this, if I even could do it, I'd need a guarantee. How do I know you can deliver?
You don't.
But I can.
And yeah, I got away with absolute murder. Like 2 toenails had to be yanked off. I had a pretty horrific case of runner's knee, and like my patella was made of Nutella, as my mates would say. But it basically took me 3 to 5 days to be able to do like light jogs, not walk without pain, get up the stairs pain-free and all that stuff. Like I'm still, as I said, like 7 to 10 days, I've only just got over it. I had like a really bad cold and flu, so my immune system was absolutely battered. And my knee, it's still not great. Like I can't do lunges or squats in the gym yet, but I'm back running now. I'm back playing paddle. I'm back playing rugby. I played a J1 game there the other day. I hadn't played in 2 years, and I came back, and the first touch I had was a spear tackle. So whoever the Trinity number 10 was in that game, you spear tackled me in my neck. So thank you. But we won, so it's all good. But yeah, it's done. Before we go, I'd like to thank everyone for the support. The link is still open, as I said. So if you haven't donated and you still have a bit of guilt, it's going to remain open, I think, till the end of the month, and then it's done for good. But yeah, glad it's over. I don't know if I'll ever do something like that again. I did say that the last time is the only thing I'll say, but yeah, if God knows when or if or how, but if I do something again for charity, my God, it's going to be probably the most crazy thing you've ever seen. But for the meantime, thanks for all the support, thanks for the messages, thanks for the love, thanks for the hate, etc., etc., etc. And yeah, if I said etc., etc. again, I'd have to do 50 in 50 days. So watch that space, I suppose. And actually, last thing, I need to say that I'm going to be doing a few more podcasts, not solo ones, by the way. This was a one and done. But Roy Sutherland is coming on in, I believe, 2 weeks. So any questions you have, let me know. I'm also having Dean Carnazes, I think his name is. And for those of you who don't know who Dean Carnazes, I need to get his name right, realistically. But he is an absolute champ where what did he do? He ran 350 miles in 80 hours. He ran a marathon in the South Pole, so that's minus 25 degrees, without snowshoes in 2002. And he also ran a marathon in each of the 50 states in the US in 50 consecutive days in 2006. So if you're interested in asking any questions about him or to him, let me know. But yeah, it's done. I don't have to spam you ever again. I don't have to worry about hitting target and work and then 4 minutes later starting a marathon again. And yeah, I'll miss it. I enjoyed it in a weird, perverse, psychotic, sociopathic way. I did enjoy it. And I suppose the biggest learning I can take from it is that your mind is genuinely capable of some of the most outstanding, terrifying, yet inspiring things that your imagination can only dream of. And in some cases, the dreams that you imagined can actually happen. So enough of this David Goggins bullshit. Thank you for listening. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the support. And until next time, as the great Rob Lipsett once said back in circa 2013, keep it real.